Hello and good morning, everybody. Welcome to professional Liverpool hosted event all around the social impact movement that is I Am More. My name is Stuart Maddox and I'm excited to join you this morning. With the team from I Am More, we have Stuart Fitzgerald,
morning.
Lynn Lock, and we have Jayne Moore. So good morning.
Morning.
Thank you very much to the employers giving up their time this morning to come and hear more about how I Am More can help employers across the Liverpool City region to engage with and bring young people into the world of work. Something that I'm particularly passionate about, having worked as in my training and development capacity for young people and employers for coming up to 20 years now. So I'm very much looking forward to taking us on a journey as the chair today and exploring some of the key things that I Am More can help the employers with across the city region. So if, in order to begin, Jayne, if you don't mind if I come to you first, I think it might be useful for some of the audience members to understand a little more about initially what Jayne Moore Media do, with you being based here in the city centre.
Sure. Well, More Media is a full service marketing and communications agency. And I always say our job is to kick doors in and make things happen for our clients. At the end of the day, we're somebody who adds value in the kind of sales journey and in the communications results to make sure that we deliver a return on investment.
Okay, fantastic. So tell me a little bit more, Jayne, about what I Am More is all about and what made you want to establish a learning brokerage as a consequence of your initial thoughts.
Well, being a kid from Kenny, as I am, and I came back to Liverpool in 2002, having been down in London and back there Birmingham. For me, seeing kids having to get into marketing through volunteering and working for free would never have been an option when I was growing up, because I had to go into work. I left sixth form with a cluster of GCSEs and CSEs, and I always say a bag of gymnastics award, and charm, personality and enthusiasm. And I think I was lucky that I had a friend, my sister's friend worked in the job centre, and she used to find me the prime opportunities that would come through. So I was helped on the way, and I had family who would get me into places. Coming through today, I think I'd really struggle, because I don't think that network is necessarily as active or as able, unless the parents can get involved. But, you know, I didn't have that luxury really to help me on my way. So I've always been really passionate about helping young people. And if I want them to work by volunteering, then I must justify them by paying them. And it's really important to me that kids are valued in that space. And really, when Kickstart came about, Stuart introduced me to Lynn, and it was like there's this alignment of the planets where all my passions and desires to help suddenly became a funded route through the Department of Work and Pensions. So Lynn, with her amazing experience, said to me, well, why don't we just do this? So that's what we've done, is this creates a learning brokerage.
Yeah, fantastic. It's really interesting to hear, Jayne, your experience has helped shape what you want to do in order to give back and provide those opportunities.
The key difference, I think, we're coming at this, yes, to help the young people and to support the young people, but actually it's from an employer's perspective. Most training providers come at this from a funding, and they bend shape to fit around the funding. We're looking at what's best for an employer and to match them in the way that you go to a commercial agency to find you the best candidates. That's how we're approaching it. But of course, rather than charging you 20%, we're actually giving you a brokerage fee.
Yeah, I understand. It makes sense. I think it's also important for the audience to note that a little later on we'll have a Q&A session as well, allowing you to put your questions to the team at I Am. There's a chat function, as we all know, on Zoom these days. So we could ask you to populate that with any questions that you have. A little later we'll come to that point. But I'd like to explore a little more about understanding the story, some of the detail. Just before I move on from you, Jayne, I have a question around the two people in your team. Initially, I'm going to touch upon Stu Fitzgerald. How did you come across Stu and therefore invite him to lead I Am More?
Well, I always fell in love with Stuart at the Three Queens gala dinner that he hosted when he was chair of Michael Causa, when he used the phrase, "it's just love" about LGBTQI. And it was just, we'd been on a board together with Gary Miller for his Lord Mayor term, and that's how we originally met. But that moment when he spoke on stage as Chair Michael Causa, I just thought he's amazing. And obviously when I had the opportunity to create some new businesses, because as well as more the media and I Am More, I've also launched My Odd Job Guys. So I straight away thought of Stuart. A good mate of ours, Wayne, connected us again. And Stuart has come in as chief executive of My Odd Job Guys, which is a handy person service with a real ethical value built within it.
Okay, fantastic. You can see all the links there. And a degree, I think, in these things of serendipity when people come together with shared causes and shared passions. So, Stu, if you don't mind, I'll come to you now.
Yeah, of course.
Can you tell us a little bit more about, what the Kickstart scheme itself is all about, and from your perspective, in terms of I Am More, why now and why here in this Liverpool City region in particular?
Of course, yeah. So Kickstart was introduced by Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, under the banner of the Department for Work and Pensions. That's the central government department whose role is to help people become more employable, to help them into work. We obviously have a separate role, which is the Department of Business, Innovation and Skills, which is all about economic development of the businesses in the nation. But DWP is there to help people with their employability, help them into jobs, help them into training, help them into new careers. I think why now is very obvious. I think this is I don't think it's a government response to COVID. So there's a very clear recognition within government that hundreds of thousands of people were losing their jobs. Some are being furloughed first, some are subsequently made redundant. The opening and closing of the hospitality sector and other sectors through the various lockdowns has really hampered businesses to retain their sustainability and to keep going. And so in a place like Liverpool City Region, where we're primarily dependent on 3 or 4 key sectors, those key sectors might be hospitality, the public sector, so civil service departments and so on. Those have been so badly affected that in the Liverpool City Region in particular, we need something like this to help us bounce back hopefully together, hopefully economically, and hopefully with a real social perspective. So we're determined within I Am More to make sure that local people are helped to benefit from this. Local families are able to benefit. And of course, local employers are aligned with individuals who are enthusiastic to get into their business and take a step, maybe that first step in their career, onto the ladder of having a career, onto the ladder of having a profession. We're calling those ladders of social mobility, giving people the opportunity to step up and into a career for the first time. Yeah,
no, I hear what you're saying, and I think that'll resonate with a lot of the employers on today. If you think about the immediate benefits of taking on young people into the workplace and the vibrancy and the energy and the innovation that it brings, I think it's a really exciting opportunity, as you say, backed by the government, to do something different as this, very difficult time, hopefully very shortly. In terms of the passion that you've got, Stu, just to reiterate the question I asked for Jayne, in terms of helping young people into new careers, where does that stem from?
Couple of things, really. I'm a father of 5 grown-up kids. My eldest is 34 today, on Paddy's Day. 3 grandkids arrived in the space of 11 months. So my kind of passion for having kids, I planned to emigrate before the grandkids arrived, but now that's come a bit too late for us.
Now Monday's Felicity Day.
Exactly. I've just fallen in love all over again with having that parental sort of influence.
Yeah.
I guess as well, my second job out of uni was working for the Department for Employment. So the forerunner of the Department for Work and Pensions. And that was back in the late 80s, helping to quality assure the YTS provision that was available. Very different scheme, certainly not fully funded in the way that Kickstart is by DWP. It was very, very limited funding as a small wage for 16 to 19-year-olds. And I got passionate about it then, about giving people that opportunity, those ladders of social mobility we talked about. And then when you think about COVID, and I'm thinking, what about those young people who've left GCSEs or finished in year 11 in June last year? They've been given predicted grades, rightly or wrongly. Then you think about those kids who are leaving school after A-levels, given predicted grades again. You then think about, do those young people who have done A-levels and wanted to go to uni, do they want to spend £9,500 a year on a virtual rag week? Do they want to spend £9,500 a year having a virtual flat in a virtual other city? Or do they actually want to say to themselves, well, that's not the university plan I had for myself. What I'd rather do is step into employment. Well, guess what? You can't step into employment because society is closed down. The economy is largely closed down. Even those businesses who planned to recruit in the last 12 months have sat on their hands because they don't want to take a new member of staff in when 100% they're going to be working from home. They've not even got a chance to meet the team they're going to be working with. So Kickstart for me is a perfect opportunity, fully funded by DWP, to bring some of those young people into their first career step, to bring them to the advantage of employers like us. We've employed our own. We're bringing 4 or 5 young Kickstart people in to join us. Alfie, that Lynn will refer to shortly, I'm sure, has joined us 2 weeks ago. He's revolutionised what we thought was a fantastic business from the first day he arrived. And Alfie's a 23-year-old young man, had a couple of jobs before, now working with us and taking us on to that next plane. So, you know me, I can't disguise my passion for all things Liverpool, all things social value, all things SMEs and all things CSR in the city. I've got to help these people into careers. And that's why we've assembled the team that we have.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, Stu. I mean, you talk about the aspects that igniting the business, young people's input. I think it's really key. And I think undoubtedly for employers, that's part of the reason why this is an exciting opportunity to find more, understand how I might be able to integrate those people in my organisation. Just in terms of some of the details, Stu, and I'll come to Lynn reasonably shortly, but is the Kickstart to only professional service style businesses and for business admin style roles, or what is the detail that sits behind that, Stu?
Very simply, Kickstart is sector agnostic. So it literally is available to any job in any sector right across society. So let's make that really clear. There might be a perception that Kickstart is only available for the jobs in town, the jobs in big businesses. That's absolutely not the case. And in fact, if we had the City Region Combined Authority on the call, we would find them saying that actually the professional and business services sector is one of the lowest take-up areas of government-funded training programs. So that's one of the things that we want to tackle. So as far as we're concerned, we want to bring 1 or 2 particularly key things to our interpretation of Kickstart in our city through I Am More. Those two key things are, we want to get it into every sector that we can, but we actually are looking for businesses where people will have careers with medium to high value roles, medium to high value waged jobs in medium to high value organizations. That is something that we want to focus on, not exclusively at the exclusion of everything else, but that's a key thing for us because we know that the City Region is underrepresented when it comes to businesses. We should have 59,000 businesses in our City Region for the 1.5 million people. We've only got 36,000. So we've got to make sure that we have people here capable of taking those SMEs onto the next level. Secondly, though, there's the principle of additionality. I want to, without getting into stereotyping of any communities, I want to get the BAME kids into the legal sector. I want to get kids from disadvantaged North Liverpool communities into town, working for the likes of Kenny, the likes of Kirkdale, Litherland. I want them working in proper jobs, what will be perceived potentially for some of these families. These might be the first job in 2 or 3 generations, in 20 or 30 years even. So we want to bring that additionality to the table as well.
Can I just add, they're not problem children. These are kids who've got bright sparks, who are fully vetted through our processes, who are just hungry for more. And that's why we called it I Am More. Not because I want my name on everything, because that's the feeling that is inside these young people that is bursting out of them.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's that enthusiasm we want to encapsulate and bring into the employment sector. So to answer the question more directly, we've got people moving into cleaning vacancies, janitorial vacancies. We've got people moving into sport, into performing arts. We've got people moving into architecture practices, accountancy, into the legal sector, engineering, construction, even the Jayne media business. We've got lots of people looking to get into marketing roles, lots of businesses wanting people to manage their social media for them.
Lab skills.
To other than the young people. So it's literally across the breadth of the economy.
Okay, so it's the whole spectrum, and I think one of the points that you raised there for me is absolutely critical. Is how do we afford the opportunities for people to develop themselves in terms of their competencies? So the longevity of the thriving nature of the city region continues, and getting people into those opportunities and jobs that allow them to build competence. This is a great way, a catalyst in order to do that.
Absolutely. Okay. And our hope with Kickstart is literally that. It's a kickstart for an individual to get a foot on the ladder, to get 6 months extended interview and extended induction within a business, to then make themselves so invaluable to that business that they get retained after that. They then may want to make a step in terms of becoming an apprentice if they haven't got a graduate career behind them. But it's then putting them on that route way into a business, the kind of route way that one or two of us have had in this conversation already back in the day, and really getting them a start. Crucially as well, though, this is not just about the city region. Obviously, that's the place that we want to deliver most of our efforts. But we're geographically agnostic as well. I Am More is active in North Wales. We're delivering vacancies to people across the country in different businesses. This is not about putting Scousers on trains to go and work in London. That's a film I don't want to see, to be honest with you. I've seen snakes on a plane. I don't want to see Scousers on a train. But what I can say is that this is an opportunity. We will use the DWP's job centre network to make those placements all around the country. Some businesses have come to us and said, we'll only work with you as our gateway provider if you can help me fill vacancies in the other offices nationwide. And we said, yes, of course we can. So it's important to recognise this isn't just about Liverpool City.
Okay, so the scope is beyond the city region, but of course that's the heartbeat of it and the reason why it was set up. But it's good to hear that you have that capability. So one final question for you, Stu, before I come on to Lynn. It's kind of a dual-pronged question in respect of how did you come across Lynn as well? I've said Jayne, how did you come across Stu? I'm really interested in how you came across Lynn and how you felt that would work well. And secondly, what success have you had with the I Am More Kickstarter so far? I'm sure that's probably interlinked to your and Lynn's relationship in the professional sense here in terms of growing things for I Am More. So I'll let you speak a little bit about that.
Okay, so I think it's quite apparent that we've blown people's socks off with the I Am More approach to Kickstart. To that very extent, Lynn's had a call from the Director General of the DWP, having selected I Am More as a particularly crucial case study that they'd like to look at, and specifically say to us, how have you done it? How have you been so successful? Which sectors are you in? What can we learn across the country from the way I Am More have done it? That's been the success. We're well over 200 places by the end of next week, when we will have submitted another large cohort. We're asked to submit them monthly at the moment. After that cohort's been submitted, we'll be well over 200 brand new jobs created in the space of 3 months worth of work. And that's mostly relied upon our personal connections between Jayne, Lynn and myself so far. There's been barely any publicity from us. We're only just about to start on that journey.
Oh, don't say that. We did take over LinkedIn at one point.
We did for the day.
We were trending and everything.
But then just back to the Lynn points and where we got Lynn and the fantastic talent and experience and expertise she brings. I had literally had 2 or 3 hours, if that, of Zoom calls where I was part of a group of people in which Lynn was in that same conversation. And I sussed with the things that Lynn was saying, making the most sense in the room. You know, obviously I was in it, so she's bound to be making the most sense of the room. Bottom line was I could see somebody there who had a passion not to be doing the thing that she was doing at the time, and actually to step into somebody who was going to take this process and this opportunity with Kickstart and with young people locally very seriously. So Lynn and I had a couple of conversations offline from that led to those conversations that we've talked about coming into to I Am More. That's enabled us to hit the ground running. Lynn's got 30 plus years experience in this sector and knows the funding and training landscape inside out. So much so now that she's being offered non-exec opportunities in other businesses around the country to advise them on similar work as this. So we're in absolutely the right hands. We've got the right team around us, and we'd love to help employers on this call today.
Okay, that's great to hear, Stu. Thank you very much. A couple of comments coming through in the chat now. I think you can probably all see them, but you know, a lot of congruence and an agreement there in terms of people coming into businesses that have channeled their ambition and the motivation in the right way, they can really, really make a difference. Yeah. Particularly in local society, but also to those organisations that are embracing this opportunity. So, Lynn, can I spend a little time coming to you and into a bit of the detail and the experience that you have to help us understand a little bit more?
Okay.
Can you tell us a little bit about who's eligible for the Kickstart scheme? Is it open to all ages, for example?
So firstly, I mean, eligibility for Kickstart in specific is 16 to 24-year-olds. So again, capturing those people who are currently on universal credit. So the presumption when we say young people, we tend to think, or I used to think of, your 16, 17 and 18-year-olds. I've got to be totally honest. The majority of people we're meeting are 20 plus, 20 to 24. You can actually be 24 and turn into a 25-year-old whilst on Kickstart and still be eligible. The crux is you must be on universal credit. But if we look at the people who find themselves on UC at the moment, as the guys have said, it's people who have been at uni, people who have decided that they can't have a gap year, people who have been furloughed, people who have literally come out of education because there's been a need in the family. You know, if you're the only one working, this is imperative. And to get the first step on the ladder in the right way, you know, sometimes I'm a great believer in the greatest seat of learning is the world of work. You know, I think majority probably on this call, if you look back on your career, you tend to have learned an awful lot from the socialization of going to work mixed with the employment skills, and you build that up. And, you know, the opportunity for employers to mold people in the right way. You know, our plea is very clear. This is our talent pool in the Liverpool City region. Unless we collectively create those opportunities to make those people the best they can be, unless they move house, our talent pool is that. So whether you go to a recruitment agency, whether you meet someone through an Indeed ad, or indeed if you come to I Am More and we do a sift and screen process with you, you're going to meet the same pool of people. It's just the entry route and the wraparound support that we feel very, very passionate about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of that will resonate with a lot of the audience today, Lynn, from some of the comments that we're seeing. But I think with your experience and having worked with very recently in terms of the success of I Am More's Kickstarter, could you just articulate for us as employers what is in this for the young people? I mean, it sounds like an obvious thing, but you're seeing this and it's visceral for you. You're getting that feedback day to day and as it happens live. So tell me a little bit more about what the young people that you're engaging with are getting from the process and the opportunity.
Yeah, now I'll be totally honest, and I always am, and I suppose that's why I work well with Stu and Jayne. And it's very much about the process that needs to change. You know, the whole system probably needs a radical shake-up, and Kickstart has given us the opportunity and the platform to do that. And that's not on our own, that's with employers, like, you know, the people on the call today. This is how we can change a flawed system. My background has been adult education, so funded training, as Stu said. What's tended to happen is the world of education has not molded to meet the needs of employers. And I say that candidly. At the end of the day, every employer sitting here today will have their bottom line in focus. And that's our job too, because when we share the responsibility and the relationship of finding a young person, that is so key. That young person's got to make a contribution to the business. Otherwise it becomes a drain. And I know we're doing this for the right reasons, but what I'm saying is that the people out there have the skills and ability. So if I dart back to what is the young person finding, what would our interaction with young people is equally as informative as our relationship with employers. Young people are open and honest with us, telling us that the process of them trying to engage with an employer is difficult. There are barriers, and those barriers are not only society, but the process of going on to benefits, the process of going through a system of how do I engage with an employer? How can I articulate what I can bring to their business? And one of the changes we want to make within I Am More is probably to not exclude people, but to include more people. And things like the process of, have you got a CV? How many of us have said that to someone? That's lovely, have you got a CV? And what we're meaning is, we'll divert that possibility back slightly, because when you receive the CV, it'll have the same words on it that's on your CV, Jayne's, Stuart's and mine. Yeah. We're all great communicators, we all work well in a team, and we can work individually. As an employer sitting here today, how do you differentiate? So if we're looking at new talent, and I've got to be absolutely totally honest, the new talent out there that we're missing, if we're not engaging with it, is phenomenal. 80% of the people who have come forward to I Am More to take part in Kickstart are degree level students. And that's me being, again, open and honest. We are not particularly looking to go out to just target degree level students. They are there, they are available, they are waiting for the opportunity. Conversely, again, this is about job match. This is all about the right person for the right role. So what we're bringing to a young person, and what they've amazingly thanked us for, is the time to listen. We're actually working with young people as young adults. So we spend time, and myself and the team will spend time with them, understanding the background, understanding their aspirations, and understanding their strengths. And like us all, they have areas that they need to brush up on. But collectively, if we know that, that's our job at I Am More, because part of our service is a wraparound support service throughout the 6 months. So what we want to do is work with training, with opportunities, with developmental feedback, how we can work as a gateway, because that's our role, between that employer and that young person, to ensure that they are contributing to the business, that they're thriving, that, you know, Kickstart typically is a 25-hour-a-week program, unless an employer decides to do more. That leaves us in our general working week a huge window of opportunity to add additional skills, knowledge, socialization towards that young person. So I think the biggest message from young people to us is thank you for making introductions. We're now turning young people into young entrepreneurs, which is a fantastic word. They're a contributor to a business. They're starting to understand the role that they can play, because our employers are taking the time to make them aware of the role. Yeah. And I think after, as we're emerging out of lockdown, I think honestly, it could be the best business decision anyone makes, to bring someone additional to the team to support existing colleagues who are returning, who have worked at home for maybe 12 months, who are getting back used to practices. We're seeing a young person coming in with the ability to pick up some slack, to bring some additional skills. You know, talking to businesses, so many businesses are desperate for social media marketeers. You know, as you'll probably, as Stuart has alluded to, our technical skills from Stuart and I on IT and social media networking isn't profound, but we've got an Alfie person now who is introducing us into a new world. Yeah. We're listening to a 22-year-old who has actually changed our lives and the way we operate. And that for us is, every one of us needs to take a little step and learn. And Kickstart is that opportunity, a fully funded opportunity to do that.
That's great, thanks. And it's really good to hear your viewpoints, having been immersed in this kind of space for a long, long time. And I think that experience is really key to tap into, particularly on our exploration of what I Am More is all about. Just putting my employer's hat on for a moment, and sitting here and thinking, right, well, so what's the implication for me as an employer taking somebody on? You talked about the wraparound services and the support and the training. Is there a heavy burden of training on the employer for Kickstart through I Am More, or how does the support work in that respect? What would that look like?
Okay, so what we've been able to do through obviously understanding the landscape and networks, in some instances, we're able to look at some pre-employment training. So I'll give you some examples. We've had a number of roles for teaching assistants within a school. Fantastic environment. It was a school for the visually impaired. So it was a very, very important role. So someone to work alongside teaching staff. And as we all know from the press, you know, that's so important to bring education back and to try and catch up after after lockdown. Those young people were able to go on a program of learning for 2 weeks prior to interview. So we were able to get fully funded qualifications such as paediatric first aid, crucial to going into that role, safeguarding, general health and safety knowledge, communication skills, specific skills that enable that young person to articulate their potential at interview.
Mm-hmm.
6 went to interview, 5 of them had degrees, 4 of them had portable DBS certificates or that were able to start work straight away, and immediately 3 went into roles. So we've got places for the other 3, but what I'm saying is we got some pre-employment training. Now they've started on their journey with the employer, the standard learning and development that they will do as part of CPD with the school. But additionality can come from I Am More. So we can work on some of the softer skills around the edges if needed. Yeah. But what I'd say, you know, depending on the instances, these young people were bringing skills to the school that the school didn't currently have. So that was things around developmental learning using music, developmental learning using dance as a medium. So it was an opening exercise that blew the socks off the school. Mm-hmm. And I think Kickstart, as Stu alluded to, we've got a conversation with the Director General of DWP based on the opportunities that we're bringing to the table and radicalising what is a clunky employment process. Our job is to make it smooth for the employer. And what I'd say is that wraparound service goes, it's a 360. It's us working with the employer. It's us working with the individual. But more importantly, we take that need for the employer to be too immersed in anything other than his standard practice. Additionality will come through us. I've noticed through a lot of employers that we're working with, they're keen to understand the continuation of the journey. So what happens after the 6 months? You know, I'm really liking the person I've met, they're fitting in with the business. At 6 months, that person becomes available for employment. Yes, definitely. But more importantly, our expertise in I Am More can look at other opportunities. That might be an apprenticeship. That might be some further education. But our aim is to work with our city region partners, because this for us is very much about a wraparound support. We've got some of the best employers I've ever worked with, and I've worked nationally. We've got some of the greatest infrastructure with regards to training opportunities and support available. It's just joining the dots on how it all meets. And I Am More is the interface that can make that happen.
Fantastic, Lynn. You know, you've just touched upon something that's very close to my own heart here about, you know, the region. I think sometimes we can forget that we've got world class on our doorstep, right the way across, you know, a variety of sectors. And I think these young people can help, you know, solidify that, and also help us quantify what world class looks like in a changing world. You know, you just talked a little bit about some employers actually being shown some blind spots, I guess, by some younger people coming in that are looking at things creatively that are different than maybe businesses or teams have not looked at before. And I think that's that's really key for us to hold on to when we're thinking about whether this process of engagement with I Am More, what the benefits are that it can bring to us as an employer and beyond. Just a couple, and I'm sure some of these will come out in the Q&A very shortly when we open the chat and the floor to the people who are in the audience. But I've got a couple of questions just inquisitively. You know, if I'm thinking about trying to find vacancies and I'm a young person, where do I find those? How does that work for an employer? Like, so the kind of detail, the granular stuff that we don't always think about when we read on the internet that this is available. How does that work, Lynn?
Okay, so typically vacancies will go out via what's called Universal Credit Journal. So every young person who's on Universal Credit, which is the government's all-encompassing benefit, will have access to a journal. We've gone beyond that because this is, as we say, it's a city region thing. This is about us growing back better, but growing back together. So we've gone and reached out to a number of partners as well who have networks way in advance of our own. So reaching out as far as we can, we're reaching to universities, the Prince's Trust, Merseyside Youth Association, local agencies through the local council. So wherever a young person may be who's unemployed, we're reaching out to get those vacancies in their eye line. Yeah. We do a range of webinars, we do Eventbrite, we do events for work coaches in job centres so they can talk to people as well. If I'm honest, it's an education piece right across the whole process. If we only go for one facet of it, we're missing out, whether it be referral partners, whether it be universities, whether it be networking groups. We reach out to Professional Liverpool, a prime example. The rich fabric of our city region is probably sitting around on this call. So it's how do we, in a skills rich environment, how do we put it all together? I've had calls from parents, I've had calls from employers who, if you look back at yourselves, family, friends, neighbours, a young person in someone's eye line, please ring up, please notify us or let them know about Kickstart, because Kickstart's coming in some strange places. And at 24, I had a house and started my family. So I wouldn't have classed myself as a young person, but I was eligible for Kickstart. So, you know, like Jayne, I was the young single mum from Huyton. I went back to work in the 80s on what was called a community programme. The rest is history. I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to everyone today if someone in St. Helens hadn't wrapped an arm around me then. Yeah. So these things work, these things are organic, and these things are there for us all to contribute. And I'd say we're very creative in the way we do it. We are great at looking at a process, but like everyone, what we do is break down that process so it becomes adopted and acceptable. Yeah. And people can reach it. And you know, I've got to be honest, Jayne, Stu, myself, our phones are hot into the early evening, and that might be someone calling us about a vacancy. It might be an employer offering us a vacancy. We're very realistic in this fact. And, you know, most of us are busy, very busy during the day. You know, if an employer wants to call us at 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, when you've got some quiet time, please do it, because that's our talking time. Yeah. You know, the rest we can work out accordingly.
That's great to hear, Lynn. I think sometimes one of the mental barriers when I speak to other employers is always what will the burden be on the business if we're going to access these opportunities, you know, and how will we get the right support in order to do it effectively without it taken away from what we're currently doing. And it's good to hear all the detail of how you do that.
I'd say that we've got the privilege to be part of your business and part of a business conversation. We'll take that burden off you. Tell us what you want. Tell us your knockout factors. Give us the details of the job, even down to the support in the payment process. That comes through I Am More. So our accounts team meet with the business's accounts team and the process of the funding flows accordingly.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, as I say, 30 years of working on government programmes, and this does what it says on the tin. It's simple, it's straightforward, and it works.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Lynn. I'm conscious of time as well, folks. I'd like, Stu, I'd like to just come back a kind of full circle to you here with one final question before I open the general kind of Q&A to the rest of the people in the room today. Stu, in terms of I Am More and moving forward, clearly, you know, the Kickstart element is rewarding, exciting, and a really worthwhile initiative. Are you planning on helping businesses as well with needs in respect of whether it's training and development, CPD, or additional support? What does that look like, Stu?
Absolutely, Stuart. It's something that's, again, it's a passion of ours, because from our very first conversation with employers, and as I said, most of those early employers came from our personal connections. From our very first conversation with an employer, it became apparent that the training provision they'd had historically didn't necessarily meet their needs. It met the needs and the capabilities of the training provider, but not the very bespoke needs of a bespoke business in a bespoke sector. So it became very clear that businesses wanted something else, something more. So what we're trying to use the Kickstart process for is to make those connections with businesses, but then to leave a wedge in the door of the CEO's office on the way out, to basically say, yes, we'll help you with Kickstart. Yes, we'll help you to allow these young people to get a first step on that ladder of social mobility. But actually, more importantly, we're there to support you here from now on in. And the bottom line is, we had a partner, we had an employer a couple of weeks ago said to us in the first meeting, 20 minutes into a meeting, said, actually, as well as Kickstart, we'll have 16 people on your Kickstart placements, please. Thanks very much. We're big enough and we're growing. But actually, will you be our strategic partner to help us with recruitment, to help us with training, to help us with CPD going forward? Can you help us with apprenticeships? Can you help us with some level 5 work for leaders and supervisors in our organisation? So absolutely, when we talk about I Am More being a learning brokerage, we're there to help businesses. Businesses, those who are making widgets want to make widgets, and the CEO knows about how to make widgets profitably. He can't be expected to know, and she can't be expected to know about the training and funding landscape that we know about. We've got that 30 years of Lynn's experience, maybe a few years of my 57-year-old experience to go with it, and the insight that we've got from Jayne as a marketing guru to bring to the table and offer businesses the right connections into the right training provision. And we'll happily broker that for any business across the city region and beyond.
And if I can just add, that was really fundamental for me, because I've never really engaged with too much of the funded training, because I always felt it's too hard. So really what I wanted employers to be able to benefit from was a support service that can take away all that pain and just deliver the skills and the training development that they need so desperately to grow.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. I'm sure the people on the call today will feel enlightened and hopefully a little bit more educated around the Kickstart scheme itself, but also about potentially where I see listening to this, I Am More being different maybe than some of the other gateway providers in respect of what drives you and the values and the social impact aspect, but also the wraparound support. I think I can see very clearly not just your passion and your expertise, but also that, you know, we come back to what Jayne said before, it's coming at it from an employer's angle, I think.
Yeah.
You know, as an employer and the rest of us as employers, I think we appreciate that. So I'd just like now to throw open the kind of general Q&A on the chat. I'm conscious some people might have some specifics that they'd like to get into. You know, as the chair, I've kind of tried to ask some questions that I think might help us understand a little bit more in general about I Am More, but please do feel free to put anything in the chat that you would like answering from any of the team, Stu, Lynn or Jayne. Direct it in any way you feel appropriate. Let's see if we can get a little bit of discussion going here. There's
yeah,
comments put in, but is there anything in particular?
Just in response to John Green's comments, we've been reaching out to the universities, managed to make contact with Hope. I'll now have a conversation with John at UOL, and we're also trying to contact JMU and their careers team. I know we've got 1 or 2 contacts in there, but it's a little bit more difficult when people are working from home, and we've only got a sort of landline number to start with. But we're happy to talk to all those referral partners.
And I've just had a message from Chris Walters on my mobile. Yes, of course, Chrissy, we'll get in touch. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Anybody else got anything they'd like to put in the chat?
We're obviously so sparkling and detailed. No one needs to ask any questions.
Well, they've all bailed.
Maybe we've answered
Just
a lot of
told you,
them already.
are we talking to ourselves? That's always my worry with these things.
So I think one may have just come into the Q&A. It was mentioned that it is a 25-hour per week programme. Is there a day off-site for training?
Right, I think I'll answer that one, Stuart.
Please.
When I said 25 hours, that is what the government will pay. Unlike an apprenticeship, there is no day off site. So an apprenticeship needs 20% offline time for development and learning. This programme is about experiential learning in your workplace. So again, the seat of learning it is there. So normal duties, I'm happy to help employers with job descriptions, etc. If an employer doesn't have one particularly at the moment. The government pays 25 hours worth of work, including national insurance contribution and auto-enrolment pension. And in addition to that, there is an onboarding payment. So it's kind of cost neutral for an employer. So there's a £1,500 of which part of that has to pay for the wraparound support. But generally we are looking at £750 for every person to onboard. That can pay for PPE, it can pay for a laptop, it can pay for some specific skills knowledge that could be a particular IT course, it could be a forklift license, it could be anything that employer feels they need, including a desk and chair to bring that young person to the business.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say before I finish up, Stu, employers can add to this. So we've got some employers who've decided to opt for a 40-hour week. So they've added an extra 15 hours that they pay for independently to that person's salary. So again, this is a very flexible piece of opportunity that we can tailor to suit the business.
Yeah, thanks, Lynn. Perfect. Just to add to that, as well as adding to the hours, the employer is able to add to the hours and make up to a full-time opportunity if they'd like to. They can also add to the salary that is paid. So whilst DWP will reimburse the business for the young person's 25 hours at the national minimum wage for their age, if a business has a living wage policy, if they have a minimum wage in their business policy of say £10.50 per hour, they're very able to do that as a top up to the young person's salary. So it's just that the DWP will reimburse only for 25 hours, only for national minimum wage at that age, but you can top up the hours, you can top up the wage.
Great, thanks Stu, thanks Lynn. Hopefully, Julie, that answers your question from the Q&A.
Just to add, we brought Alfie and we thought we'd have him on 25 hours, but he was so good that very quickly he's gone full time. And I'm more than happy to top that up because he's worth it.
Super. Anybody else got any other questions? I'm just checking in the Q&A here. I think we just had another one come in. No, Julie's just thanked you. That's great. Thank you very much. You're welcome, Julie. I've actually got one with my employer hat on. If I've got a vacancy for a young person and I'm thinking about Kickstarter, if I've already got a young person in mind that I may have a connection with, how does that work, if at all?
Right. So what we need to do is make sure that young person meets the eligibility criteria. So again, 16 to 24 and currently on universal credit. Yeah. Okay. What we can do is introduce that young person. And this has happened in some businesses where they've had a young person who's come on work experience previously from school or college. They've gelled, they've bonded, and they're waiting for an opportunity. That Kickstart opportunity is available. That young person still needs to go through their universal journal with their work coach, but they're at liberty to apply. They can apply for that role and move forward. And we're happy to talk them through that process, so they understand this isn't about catching people out. This is about engaging people in. So again, what the conversations we're having with DWP and job centres, this is our city region. We want it to resonate with the sound of Kickstarters, kicking those doors in, as Stu said. It's about making it work, never setting it as a barrier.
Yeah, a really good point of reflection, I think, Lynn. I'd just like to offer the opportunity for any further questions at this point. I'm conscious we've covered a lot. You know, we've had 50 minutes of lots of information that hopefully we found very useful. If there is anything now, I'll just pause for a moment, just in case there's one or two final questions. Of course, there's always the opportunity to get in touch direct with the great team that you've met today. Stu, Lynn and Jayne directly in relation to any I Am More or Beyond. But if there are no further questions, which there might be actually, one I think might have just come into the Q&A. Okay, so Julie has asked, when the jobs are advertised on the Universal Journal, does it show the business name?
No, we purposely don't do that. And for the reason, and I'll tell you for why, I've adopted within the team to be that first point of contact for every vacancy. Just, you know, I'm mindful that employers don't want to be swamped with vacancies. My role and the team's role is to do that sift and select process, which is key. So me working very closely with the business leader or HR department to understand the dynamics of the role, because sometimes there's a cultural fit as well. So that is as equally important as the skill set. So once we get to grips with that, the sift and screen that I'll conduct will be based on that criteria. Until I have, you know, and an employer might want to say, Lynn, I'll take them all the applications, that's fine. But most employers prefer us to do that process for them. We'll fine tune it to an agreed number of the top 10 or the top 6 young people for interview. And then we can go from there. But as I say, this wraparound process is about taking the headache away. You know, put it on Indeed and you find, and there are other websites available, but put it out there and you'll end up with people speculatively throwing a CV in. Let's do it as adult to adult, peer to peer, where we've got a talking point. We're talking about skills, aspiration, potential and growth. And that goes across for the business as well.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Lynn. I think that was reasonably comprehensive and Julie's said perfect. Thank you. So I guess all it remains for me to do at this point, if there are no more questions, is first of all to thank our panel today for their time and their expertise and for sharing more about I Am More. I think we, again, saying full circle again, but I think it's important we go back, a social impact movement aimed at helping young people into work. You know, I think that's a movement that I would suspect the majority of people, if not all of us, are absolutely more than happy to get behind. I guess now it's just a case of how can it work for the individual employers. And those questions will...
If I can just throw in, from an employer's point of view, anyone who can find a chair and a desk to give a young person an opportunity in this time should, is all I think. There's no reason why not, because you've got the government support and the financial backing to do it. And you know, the value added from that person bringing new energy into your business is unquantifiable.
Yeah, and Jayne's experienced that firsthand in the last 2 weeks with Alfie, I'm sure. So, the other aspect is for also to thank Alex Clark and the wonderful team of Professional Liverpool for hosting the event and allowing us to connect with all of you wonderful employers. So thank you once again for your time. If any of the panelists have anything in addition to say, please do say anything in addition now. Otherwise, we're going to close off. Stu?
Just to thank you, Stu, for chairing the session. For those that don't know Stuart Maddox, he's also, in his own right, a businessman who runs organisational development programmes for massive employers. There's an executive coach for CEOs of big groups, HSBC, Google, across the country and beyond. And we're delighted to be working with you, Stu, and looking for opportunities to do some more stuff with you in the coming years. So thank you for chairing the session so well.
No problem at all. It's been a pleasure and I've enjoyed it, and it's something that's really close to my heart too. I think affording young people opportunities and growing competence and continuing to grow that world-class approach here in Liverpool on our doorstep is really vital for the vibrancy of the economy and everybody's well-being as we move forward too. Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much, everybody. I hope you all have a good day and look forward to seeing you again at some point in the future.
Take care.